Hi, today let us take a closer look at Angular2 architecture. Angular 2 is a web application framework. Every Angular 2 project will have at least one root module, and every root module can have many feature modules. So we call a particular class as a module because this particular class has a decorator called ng-module, and ng-module decorator can take a lot of input parameters like declarations, imports, providers, and bootstrap. For example, declaration says that this particular module has this particular component in it, and you can specify a number of components within declaration section. And imports says I want to import the capabilities of browser module into app module. And we'll talk more about providers in the later chapters. This is where we specify all our services. And Bootstrap specifies the component that should be loaded first, or the component that shows up on the view when your module gets loaded. So every root module can import multiple feature modules. For example, in this case, we have two modules, module 1 and module 2. Both are feature modules, and you can import the capabilities of both modules into the root module. For the sake of simplicity, I'll try to explain with just one single module. That's the root module. So a component. Component is a JavaScript class with @component decorator. So if you take a closer look at this particular example here, export class bindings component. So bindings component is the name of the component, and this particular class becomes a component because we are decorating it with a decorator called @component. And @component can take input parameters, and some of the parameters that you are seeing here are selector and template URL. A selector, so this basically is a selector. Selector is the key and my app is the value. Template URL is the key and bindings.html is the value. So my app will act as a tag on the HTML view. So we'll talk more about this when we are talking about templates. And template URL is the template that your component is bound to. So every component is bound to a template. So a template is basically a piece of HTML code. For example, if you take a look at this particular example, so this is an example of a HTML template. So it's all the HTML5 tags that you are seeing here. So a two-way binding happens between components and templates. So when I say two-way binding, I mean a component has a variable called person, and it has a function called increment. So I want to display the value of person on the template, on the view. So this is how I do it. So I have person within two flower braces. So it knows, so Angular2 knows that it has to display the value of the variable person from the component bindings component, because I am binding this particular HTML with this component using template URL. So this is where I specify the name of the HTML that my component is associated with. So this is a way data binding, and the second way, like the event binding, happens from HTML template to the component. If you look at the div tag, so div tag has a click attribute, and the value to the click attribute is a function. So this function is a function in the component. So when you click on this particular div tag, it invokes this increment function, and this gets invoked here. So the increment function in the component gets invoked. So that's how a two-way binding happens between components and templates. So let's talk about directives. A directive is a component with no template companion. So a template is always associated with a component, whereas a directive is not directly associated with the template. So a component acts as a patch on the view of the template, whereas a directive transforms the view. Let's take a look at the example. So here, export class drag. So drag is the name of the directive, and this particular class becomes a directive because we are decorating it with a decorator add directive, and add directive can take a couple of parameters as the input, selector and host in this scenario. So even though there is no direct relationship between a directive and a HTML template, a directive can always modify or transform the way how the HTML looks like, or how a HTML view can be used. Same thing with pipes. Even a pipe is meant to alter the appearance or the behavior of an existing element. For example, in this case, the name of the pipe is checkmark pipe, which implements a pipe transform class, and I am overriding the transform function with my functionality in this. So I basically want to transform a particular value into a different format. I can do that using pipes. We'll take a deeper look at how pipes works in our later chapter. So you can induce a pipe into a HTML template using the pipe symbol. Services. A service can be a value, function, or feature that the application needs. Almost anything can be a service. An example for a service can be a logging service, a data service, or a message bus, or an application configuration. So basically, your service can be anything. Let's take a look at the example. So greeting calculator is our service here, and it becomes a service because we are having a decorator called @injectable for this particular class. So you can basically inject your service into a component, and you can inject the same service into many components at the same time. So yeah, that's what I mean. So you can inject this service into the component, and you can make use of all the functions that are available within the service in your component. So let's say if you want to invoke a REST service, you can write the logic of invoking the REST service, which is external to your Angular2 system in the service layer. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel.